But this is also happening in the brain, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So what's really interesting is when you eat fructose, only a small amount of fructose gets to the brain. So you would think that the brain would be safe from the effects of fructose to some extent. But what happens is the brain can actually make fructose, and when you eat sugar, the we don't totally know the mechanism, but it seems that that stimulates fructose production in the brain. So sugar and salt and high glycemic carbs all seem to drive fructose production in the brain. So it's not just the fructose you eat, it's the fructose that you make. And what's scary is that the effects of fructose in the brain appears to drive a lot of the same processes that we see in people who are developing dementia. So it causes inflammation and insulin resistance in the brain and mitochondrial problems. And what's been really a striking discovery in the last decade, as you know, has been that it isn't just the amyloid plaques and the tau protein that drives Alzheimer's, that there's a preceding phase, and that preceding phase is associated with insulin resistance. It's associated with dysfunction of the energy producing mitochondria. It's associated with neuroinflammation. And what's striking is that fructose metabolism in the brain does all three things. And the risk factors for Alzheimer's correlate with the risk factors for driving fructose up in the brain. And what I mean by that is, like in diabetics, fructose production is turned on because high glucose levels stimulate fructose production in the brain. And likewise, salt, high salt diets, which have been linked with Alzheimer's, high salt also increases the salt concentration in the blood. That turns on fructose production, and that presumably is going on in the brain. And sugar. And in fact, all the things that you've written about, David, uh, the grain brain and all the effects of diet to affect the mentation and cognition seems to be linked through this pathway. So, I
Interestingly,
hope you and
there
I, yeah,
you had a one literature citation in the book that was from, I think, June of 2016, Scientific Reports, where researchers demonstrated, I think it was a handful, 18 postmortem, 9 with and 9 without Alzheimer's, that the level of fructose and its immediate precursor from glucose, sorbitol, were increased 4 to 6 fold in the
yeah,
Alzheimer's brain in comparison to the non-Alzheimer's afflicted brain, and also surprisingly a much higher level of glucose in certain brain areas. And it speaks to the fact that it's the utilization, it's this bioenergetic defect that we've been talking about now for the past decade or so, that seems to be so fundamental, and the downstream effects therefrom, including inflammation and upregulated free radical production or oxidative stress, compromising mitochondrial function, and then that leading to this caspase enzyme activation and therefore neuronal apoptosis, or the death of brain cells. And I
yeah.
often quote an interesting study that looks at being predictive by doing these FDG, these fluorodeoxyglucose studies that show brain glucose utilization being compromised in these Alzheimer's signature regions long before people are having these cognitive manifestations.